The title of the next keynote speech is Undoing Autocracy, Rebuilding the Rule of Law and Democratic Norms. Please welcome Rafał Trzaskowski, the Mayor of Warsaw.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, Gergely, thank you very much for organizing it and for inviting me. It is always a pleasure to be in Budapest and to address you. We've been meeting on numerous occasions here in Budapest, in Warsaw, and in different cities as we've created the Pact of the Three Cities. And I remember when we were discussing the situation of democracy and the rule of law in Poland a few years back, and I was always telling you that it's not easy. It's very difficult, that the situation is complex. Now we have a free and democratic government in Poland, and we are rebuilding democracy and strengthening resilience. And if you ask me what's the situation, I will tell you that it's difficult, that it's tough, and that it's not easy. And that it requires quite a lot of responsibility. And I think that Gergely has summed it up really well, because strengthening democracy, regaining democracy, rebuilding the rule of law is a very difficult enterprise in this day and age, because the populists are on the rise, because the progressives have to constantly learn the lesson. And I think that some of the lessons that we need to learn were aptly summed up by Gergely. I mean, we have to show that we also can resolve problems, that we can address people's fears, that we understand why populists are winning elections. We need to avoid, as we can, the pitfalls of further polarization, but it is easier said than done. And of course, Poland attests to it. And if we are serious about undoing autocracy, we need to recognize the fact that this is not a legal or institutional undertaking in itself, that it also is political and cultural. And of course that it depends on the choice of leaders. And those leaders need to take full responsibility. And I'd like to share a few principles that I think are important. The journey begins with leadership. That's why we're meeting here to discuss it, because without leaders who embody democratic values, no institution, however well designed, can defend by itself. And as I've said, that means that we need to embody these democratic values, which one should say it's obvious, but on the other hand, it requires a great responsibility, because there is a great temptation to fight the populists with their own weapons. And restoring the rule of law, and this is one of the most important messages, and here I echo what Gergely was saying, this is not just about turning back the clock, because people see the challenges that are before us and they want us to respond to them. And the worst mistake one can make is to project that feeling that this is all about restoration, because the populists were winning for a reason, because they were offering some solutions, and we need to take that into account. Now, some of the institutions that we have inherited from the populists, of course, were distorted. I mean, let's take the Constitutional Tribunal as an example. For years, it was captured and discredited, used as a political tool rather than neutral guardian of the Constitution. But now, the government is facing a very painful choice, what to do. Whether it should respect the rulings that are issued by a body whose legitimacy was, of course, undermined and is still undermined by unlawful appointments, or should it disregard these rulings, knowing, of course, that that undermines the principle of legal continuity. And there are no easy answers, because every decision carries risk. But it is important that we acknowledge these risks and that we try to face them. And this is the true challenge that is before us. Not pretending that the damage never happened, but finding a path to rebuild institutions that citizens can once again believe in. And we must try and do that. But of course, leadership and facing some of those difficult choices is not enough. Autocracy claims efficiency, and populists claim efficiency, But democracy offers resilience, and we need to keep on repeating it. That maybe we do not have quick fixes, but at the end of the day, we know how to build resilient institutions, especially in times like these, when there is so much unknown before us. Centralized institutions, centralized power, of course, you know, they can decide things quickly. And sometimes in a pandemic or during a situation where there is a war waged on our eastern border, there is a temptation for that. But of course, they're unable to correct mistakes very quickly. And that's why we need to drive the point home that democracy is not a weakness, it is strength. That yes, there are messy debates, yes, there are some compromises to be made, yes, there is slow consensus, but the price for all of that is legitimacy, stability, endurance, resilience. And unfortunately, some of our voters contest that. But we need to explain the fact that we are building an edifice which is supposed to stand and help us deal with some of the problems that are before us. And that those institutions, when they are democratic and healthy, those are the only ones that actually address the fears that people have. Resilience, however, does not mean complacency. To endure, democracy must be repaired where it has been wounded and fortified against the new threats that loom ahead. Rebuilding democracy is not about nostalgia. And this is really important, and Gergely talked about it. This is not about all the elites coming back. We need to see the reasons for the populist success. All wounds include illegally appointed judges, partisan capture of public media, corruption, politicization of state institutions, but there are new threats. Disinformation campaigns, AI-driven propaganda, surveillance technologies that erode privacy, and social media polarization. And what it requires from us, from the people on the progressive side of the politics, it's not just repairing yesterday's damage, but immunizing democracy against tomorrow's threats. So we need to find the answers what to do in order to address the questions of media literacy, digital regulation, civic education, ethic rules for technology. Otherwise, we are going to keep on losing the fights. Poland is a good example. When there was a backlash in the presidential election against some of the reforms which were driven home by the coalition, democratic coalition. And we know well how difficult it is when you're ruling in a coalition. And that, yes, there is always this question of efficiency and speed. But if we are to immunize our democracy and make sure that the populists will have or will find a difficult time coming back to power, we need to invest in resilience. We need to strengthen the NGOs. We need to strengthen the local governments. These guys in Poland for 8 years were trying to do everything to prepare such solutions that it will be immensely difficult for the next government to undo some of the damage that they've done. We need to think about strengthening democracy, so if the populist threat will become larger and larger and larger, we have tools, and the people have tools to defend against them. Strengthening local government is one case in point. I was asked about European politicians on numerous occasions years back, what could they do to help us out? And I was telling them, help local governments, strengthen them. No response. Look at the EU budget now. They want to centralize it. They have an idea because they liked so much, the recent ideas, how the money was distributed in the resilience and recovery pacts, that they now want to strengthen the same method and centralize it and take local governments, regional politicians out of that. This is learning a lesson from what happened in Poland and in other countries. It should go exactly in the other direction. It should strengthen the local, regional direction, the level in actually negotiating and then spending money. No one, it seems, is learning these lessons. That this is not just about local politicians getting together and finding a way, but that this is our common endeavor. That in the European Union we should change priorities. We should listen to what the people are saying. And finally, we're doing it. You've heard von der Leyen's speech It was completely different priorities for the European Union. Security, 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 competitiveness, buying European, building houses. That's a good direction. But we need to follow it up with all the things that I've said. Literacy, fighting disinformation, but also strengthening local government, because that's where part of the answer lies. Optimism is justified, even if you lose elections. I mean, you cannot be frustrated. You should exude certainty that things can go well. And instead of projecting a bad mood, you should focus on what could be done better in order to make sure that people know that you are listening and that you also have solutions, as Gergely was saying. Authoritarianism is not a destiny, guys. Countries have walked back from the edge. We have done it in Poland in '89. You have done it in Hungary. We won the elections in 2023. There is a way, but we cannot remain complacent, and we need to draw the lessons. We need to cultivate optimism, but it cannot be naive. It has to be determined. Autocracy thrives on hopelessness, on convincing citizens that nothing will change. And we have to show them that we know that it can change, and that this is not a restoration, but this is a much more efficient and resilient response to the real fears that people have. This is absolutely clear and important. And of course, undoing democracy, guys, is a long-term project. Vigilance is very important, because winning one election is not the end of the journey. The problems begin then, because you have to prove yourself. And of course, there is a backlash, as we've witnessed in Poland. After transition in Central Europe, many assumed democracy was irreversible. That illusion left space for backsliding, and we must learn from that mistake. Freedom and rule of law are not permanent victories. There are ongoing responsibilities. And that's the key word, guys, responsibility. So let us treat democracy like we treat our health and our environment, something we must care for every day. Citizens, leaders, institutions in Europe as a whole must remain vigilant, because autocracy does not sleep, and neither should democracy. These guys are on the rise, but we can fight them only if we fight them every day, and we can fight them only if we come up with solutions, and only when we actually prove that we listen and that people's fears are sometimes justified. And if we hold to those principles, courageous leadership, faith in resilience, honest reform, determined optimism, and unyielding vigilance, we will not only undo the damage of autocracy, but build a democracy stronger and much more enduring than before. Because democracy is never finished. It lives in the choices we make each day, and autocracy does not rest, but neither does freedom. And if we remain faithful to this calling, the promise of dignity, justice, and hope will remain with us. And even if you sometimes lose, even if there is backsliding, even if there is backlash, it just should mobilize us to do more every day, to find the answers, but most importantly, to deliver on the projects that are going to test the new realities and prepare us for those who have easy solutions for everything. We can do it, guys, provided that we talk to each other, provided that we stay committed, provided that we acknowledge the fact that fighting for democracy never ends, and provided that if we win elections, and I hope that that's exactly what's going to happen in Hungary, that actually means more responsibility, that it means that the situation and the reality becomes more difficult, not less difficult, because then you're in control and you have to prove it. Guys, one of the best things being in opposition is that it's easy compared to when you really need to grapple with this very difficult reality that is before us. And the populists always have easy answers. We cannot have easy answers, but we have to have answers, guys. And that's why we're here together, to listen to one another and to project this message of cautious optimism. And I can tell you guys that it's not easy. For the past few months, I'm trying to wake up everyone, bring them some optimism, you know. train them in positive thinking. Sometimes I ask them, who's going to help me? But the answer is, guys, you need to help yourself in order to strengthen democracy and resilience. Thank you very much. Köszönöm szépen.